I still remember the weight of that moment, standing in our driveway on graduation day, watching my parents hand my sister the keys to my car, the one I'd paid for entirely on my own. The car I'd been saving for since I was 16, working double shifts at the diner while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. The car that represented years of sacrifice and determination. My sister Charlotte squealed with delight, jumping up and down in her graduation gown while my parents beamed with pride. "You deserve this for your accomplishment," my father said, as if I hadn't graduated summa cum laude from the same university 3 years earlier without receiving so much as a congratulatory dinner. What they didn't know was that I'd anticipated this exact scenario. I'd watched them favor Charlotte my entire life, and I knew graduation day would be no different. That's why I had a notarized contract locked in my glove compartment, a legally binding document that my father had signed without reading when I'd asked him to sign this insurance form months earlier. The look on their faces when my lawyer read that contract aloud the next day is something I'll never forget. Sometimes justice comes when you least expect it, but exactly when you need it most. Growing up in suburban Massachusetts, our family looked picture perfect from the outside. My father, Richard, built a successful law practice specializing in corporate litigation. My mother, Elizabeth, maintained our colonial home with meticulous precision while serving on every community board possible. They were fixtures at the country club, and our family Christmas card was the envy of their social circle. But inside our home, there was a clear hierarchy. Charlotte was the golden child from the moment she was born, when I was 7. While I was expected to be self-sufficient and practical, Charlotte was nurtured and celebrated. My academic achievements were expected, hers were extraordinary. My violin recitals were obligations on their calendar. Her soccer games were family events with tailgate parties. When I was 16, I started working at Lenny's Diner off Route 9. 6 days a week after school, I'd serve plates of meatloaf and pour endless cups of coffee for truckers and local families. My parents were embarrassed by my job. "A Whitfield serving food?" my mother would say with thinly veiled disgust. Meanwhile, Charlotte's summer volunteering at the hospital, which consisted mostly of flirting with medical students, was deemed laying the groundwork for medical school. For my high school graduation, I received a card with a $100 check inside. The same day, my parents surprised Charlotte with a horse for her 13th birthday, a Morgan named Buttercup that cost more than my entire college tuition for the year. During college, I lived frugally in a cramped apartment with 3 roommates while taking extra classes to graduate early. Every penny I saved went toward my dream, a certified pre-owned Lexus ES that represented everything I'd worked for. I'd researched for months, negotiated hard, and paid cash, $27,000 that I'd earned entirely on my own. The car was my statement of independence, my proof that I didn't need their favoritism to succeed. What my parents never understood about me was that I wasn't just smart, I was strategic. Years of watching their behavior had taught me to prepare for disappointment. So when my father mentioned that Charlotte was worried about transportation after graduation, I felt a familiar sinking feeling. I knew exactly what they were planning. That's when I created what I call my insurance policy. I drafted a contract stating that while the car was registered in my name, my father would be listed as a co-signer for insurance purposes only. The document explicitly stated that the vehicle could not be transferred, gifted, or loaned to any third party without my written consent, with damages set at twice the vehicle's market value plus legal fees. "Just sign this insurance form, Dad," I said casually one evening while he was distracted by a basketball game. He barely glanced at it before scribbling his signature, the same careless attention he'd always given my achievements. I had the document notarized the next day and placed a copy in my safe deposit box. What they saw as a car, I saw as my dignity, and I wasn't about to let them take that from me too. Charlotte's graduation weekend arrived with the pomp and ceremony befitting a Whitfield celebration. My parents rented out the entire top floor of Harvest and Vine, the trendy farm-to-table restaurant in downtown Cambridge that normally required reservations months in advance. Relatives flew in from across the country, including Grandma Rose, who hadn't even attended my graduation due to her bad hip, which miraculously improved for Charlotte's big day. I took Friday off from my job at Baxter & Klein, where I'd been working as a financial analyst for 3 years. My apartment was spotless in anticipation of hosting my aunt and uncle from Chicago, who had insisted on staying with me to catch up properly. In reality, I knew they couldn't afford the Ritz-Carlton, where my parents had blocked rooms for everyone else. Saturday morning, I arrived at my parents' house as requested to help with pre-ceremony preparations. My mother immediately put me to work arranging charcuterie boards while she focused on the more visible tasks like arranging flowers and directing the caterers for the post-ceremony reception. Charlotte lounged by the pool, scrolling through Instagram and complaining about having to wear a basic graduation gown like everyone else. "We have a surprise for Charlotte after the ceremony," my mother whispered to me while handing me another tray of imported cheeses to arrange. "Your father is so excited he can barely contain himself." "That's great," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "What is it?" "I can't tell you," she said with a conspiratorial smile, "but it's something she's been wanting for a long time." I felt my stomach tighten. I'd parked my Lexus in the driveway that morning, as usual, the car I'd babied for 3 years, keeping it immaculately clean and serviced on schedule. The leather seats still smelled new, and the sound system I'd upgraded myself was the envy of my coworkers. During the graduation ceremony, I sat between my parents in the family section, applauding politely as the dean called Charlotte's name. My father nudged me with his elbow. "Magna cum laude," he whispered proudly, as if I hadn't graduated with higher honors from the same school. "I know, Dad, that's wonderful," I replied, reminding myself that I was here for Charlotte, not for them. After the ceremony, we gathered in the crowded courtyard for photos. Charlotte posed dramatically in her cap and gown, surrounded by friends and family. I stood off to the side, making small talk with my cousin Mark, who was the only one who seemed to notice my discomfort. "They're doing it again, aren't they?" he murmured, handing me a plastic cup of champagne. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I knew exactly what he was referring to. The golden child routine. Some things never change. As the crowd began to disperse, my father clinked his glass for attention. "Everyone, if you could please follow us to the house for a special surprise for our graduate." The procession of cars made its way back to my parents' colonial, where the catering staff had transformed the backyard into an elegant reception space during the ceremony. White chairs were arranged in rows facing a small stage area where my father stood beaming, one arm around Charlotte and the other behind his back. "Today is a day of celebration," he announced, his voice carrying across the lawn. "Our Charlotte has not only graduated with honors, but she's also been accepted into Harvard Medical School." A murmur of impressed congratulations rippled through the crowd. This was news to me. Harvard had been a long shot, even with her legacy status as my father's alma mater. "And to celebrate this extraordinary achievement," my father continued, "we wanted to give her something special to start this new chapter of her life." With theatrical flourish, he brought his hand forward, dangling a set of keys. My keys. The distinctive Lexus fob with the custom Massachusetts Red Sox charm I'd attached to it. "Charlotte, we're giving you your sister's car." The blood drained from my face as Charlotte squealed with delight. My aunt from Chicago gasped audibly beside me, her hand finding mine in silent support. "But," I started to say, before my mother cut me off with a sharp look. "Isn't this wonderful?" she said through gritted teeth. "Let's all congratulate Charlotte." As the crowd applauded, I felt something inside me shift. Years of swallowed pride and quiet acceptance crystallized into a cold, hard resolve. I watched as Charlotte skipped down to the driveway, my father following with the keys to my car dangling from his finger. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to the number I'd saved months ago but hoped I'd never have to use. Implement Plan L. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The reply came almost immediately. Confirmed. Sunday morning arrived with deceptive calm. My parents had invited the family for a farewell brunch before everyone departed for their flights home. I arrived precisely at 9:55 a.m., parking my Uber at the curb rather than in the driveway. My Lexus sat prominently in front of the garage, already sporting Charlotte's graduation tassel from the rearview mirror. Inside, the dining room buzzed with conversation. Charlotte was showing off the car keys to our cousins, dangling them like a trophy. "It's the perfect color for me," she was saying. "I was going to ask for a white one, but the pearl metallic is actually more my aesthetic." My father noticed me first. "There she is. We were beginning to think you'd overslept." "I wouldn't miss this for the world," I replied, my voice steady. The doorbell rang just as my mother was passing me a mimosa. "Are you expecting someone?" my father asked, frowning. "Actually, yes. That would be my lawyer." A hush fell over the room. My mother froze mid-pour, orange juice cascading onto the tablecloth. "Your what?" my father said, his confident lawyer voice faltering. I walked to the door and returned with Benjamin Hargrove Esquire, a trim man in his 50s carrying a leather portfolio. "Everyone, this is Ben. He's here about my car." "Your sister's car," my mother corrected automatically. Ben cleared his throat. "Actually, Mrs. Whitfield, that's why I'm here. The vehicle in question legally belongs to your daughter," he nodded toward me, "and cannot be transferred without her explicit written consent." My father's face flushed crimson. "This is ridiculous. We're her parents." "Perhaps this will clarify matters," Ben said, removing a document from his portfolio. "This is a legally binding contract signed by you, Mr. Whitfield, stating that the vehicle cannot be gifted, loaned, or transferred to any third party without your daughter's written authorization." My father's face flushed crimson. "This is ridiculous. We're her parents." "Perhaps this will clarify matters," Ben said, removing a document from his portfolio. "This is a legally binding contract signed by you, Mr. Whitfield, stating that the vehicle cannot be gifted, loaned, or transferred to any third party without your daughter's written authorization." Recognition dawned slowly on my father's face. "That insurance form was a contract," I finished for him, "which you signed without reading, rather careless for an attorney of your reputation." Charlotte stood up, her voice shrill. "But Dad already gave me the car. You can't take it back." "The contract stipulates damages in the amount of twice the vehicle's current market value plus legal fees in the event of breach," Ben continued, unruffled. "The current market value is approximately $22,000, making the damages owed $44,000 plus Mr. Hargrove's fee of $3,500. My mother collapsed into a chair. "Richard, do something!" My father, the formidable corporate attorney, was speechless for perhaps the first time in his professional life. I turned to address the stunned family gathering. "For my entire life, I've watched my achievements be minimized while Charlotte's were celebrated. I worked 60-hour weeks to put myself through college and save for that car. It represents years of my life, my independence, and my self-respect." I walked over to Charlotte and held out my hand. "The keys, please." "This is so unfair," she wailed, clutching them to her chest. "Unfair?" I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "Unfair is working through high school while you got riding lessons. Unfair is receiving a $100 check for graduation while you got a horse. Unfair is having the car I bought with my own money that I've owned for 3 years given away without even consulting me." My aunt from Chicago stood up. "She's right, Richard. This has gone on long enough." Charlotte reluctantly dropped the keys into my palm, tears streaming down her face. "I hate you," she hissed. "You'll survive," I replied calmly. "Harvard Medical School doesn't require a luxury sedan." I turned to my parents. "You have two options. Either pay the damages outlined in the contract, or I walk out of here with my car and we never speak of this again." My father's legal mind was already calculating the lesser loss. "We'll pay," he said tightly. Ben handed him his business card. "Excellent. Please have the funds wired to the account listed here by noon tomorrow. I'll email you the details." As we turned to leave, my mother found her voice. "How could you do this to your own family?" I paused at the door. "That's a question you should have been asking yourselves for the past 23 years. With that, I walked out into the sunlight, the weight of decades of inequity finally lifting from my shoulders. As I slid behind the wheel of my Lexus, removing Charlotte's tassel and tossing it onto the lawn, I caught a glimpse of my father's face through the window. For the first time in my life, he was looking at me with something new in his eyes. It wasn't love or pride. It was respect. The fallout was swift and chaotic. Within hours, my phone exploded with texts and calls from family members taking sides. Grandma Rose left a scathing voicemail about disrespect, while my aunt from Chicago sent a supportive text with a champagne emoji. Uncle Philip, my father's brother and law partner, called to say he was impressed by my strategic thinking and hinted at a potential job offer. By Monday morning, my father had wired the full amount to Ben's account. No apology, no explanation, just a terse email confirmation sent to both of us with the subject line, "Matter resolved." My mother, predictably, went radio silent. Charlotte blocked me on all social media platforms and changed her profile picture to a sad-faced selfie captioned, "Family isn't always blood." What surprised me most was the unexpected call from my cousin Mark's wife, Tessa. "I know we've never been close," she began awkwardly, "but I needed to tell you something." She revealed that during the graduation party, she'd overheard my parents discussing their arrangement with Charlotte. Apparently, they had promised her my car months ago on the condition that she apply to Harvard Medical School instead of pursuing her actual dream of attending culinary school in Paris. "They said something about family legacy and appearances," Tessa explained. "Your mom mentioned that one daughter in finance was disappointing enough and that they couldn't have Charlotte playing with food instead of becoming a doctor." The revelation hit me like a thunderbolt. Charlotte wasn't just the favored child. She was also a puppet. They had been manipulating both of us all along, playing us against each other while controlling our life trajectories to suit their social aspirations. 3 days after the confrontation, I received an unexpected text from Charlotte. "Coffee? Just us." We met at a neutral location, a small cafe halfway between our apartments. She looked different somehow, smaller and less confident without our parents' approval radiating around her. "I didn't know you paid for the car yourself," she said after an uncomfortable silence. "Dad told me it was his car that he was letting you use." I wasn't entirely surprised. There's a lot they didn't tell us about each other. "Like how they've been bribing me to follow their life plan?" She stirred her latte aggressively. "Tessa told you, didn't she?" I nodded. "I don't even want to be a doctor," Charlotte confessed, her voice breaking. "I'm terrible at organic chemistry. I failed it twice, and Dad paid a graduate student to take my final exam." We talked for 3 hours that day, truly talked for perhaps the first time in our adult lives. We compared notes on parental manipulations, impossible expectations, and the wedge that had been deliberately driven between us since childhood. By the time we left, something fundamental had shifted in our relationship. 2 weeks later, my father called. His voice was uncharacteristically hesitant. "Your mother and I have been doing some reflection," he said. "We'd like to have dinner, both you and Charlotte." The dinner was tense but transformative. My mother cried. Real tears, not the performative ones she used at charity galas. My father, ever the pragmatist, proposed what he called a family reset. "We made mistakes," he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. Serious ones. "We thought we were creating success, but we were really just projecting our own insecurities onto both of you." Charlotte announced that she had deferred Harvard and applied to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris. My mother's fork clattered against her plate, but she remained silent. "I'll need help with tuition," Charlotte said, looking directly at our father. "But this time I'm asking for it openly, not as manipulation." As for me, I used the settlement money to make a down payment on a small condo in Cambridge. I also accepted Uncle Philip's job offer, not because I needed family validation, but because the position genuinely aligned with my career goals and offered better advancement opportunities than my current firm. The most unexpected outcome came 6 months later, when Charlotte called from Paris. "Remember how Dad always said Whitfields don't work in service industries?" she asked, excitement bubbling in her voice. "Well, guess what? I just got an apprenticeship at a 2-star Michelin restaurant." "That's amazing," I told her, genuinely proud. "And," she continued, "I'm thinking of starting a small catering business when I come back. Would you consider being my financial advisor? I trust your judgment." That trust, earned rather than assumed, was worth more than any car or inheritance. My Lexus? I still drive it, but it doesn't carry the same emotional weight anymore. It's just transportation now, not a symbol of everything I needed to prove. In fact, I've been thinking about selling it and upgrading to something that better reflects who I've become, someone who doesn't need material possessions to validate her worth. Sometimes family healing comes in unexpected packages. For us, it took a legal contract and a very public confrontation to break patterns established over decades. We're not a perfect family now, far from it, but we're an honest one. And as it turns out, that honesty created space for something I never thought possible, a relationship with my sister based on mutual respect rather than competition. The greatest triumph wasn't winning the battle over the car. It was breaking free from the roles we'd been assigned and rewriting our family story on our own terms. Looking back on that graduation day 3 years ago, I realized that sometimes standing up for yourself isn't just about winning, it's about changing the entire game. My parents still occasionally slip into old patterns, but now we all have the language and boundaries to address it directly. Charlotte and I talk weekly, and last month she catered my promotion party with the most exquisite food I've ever tasted. The contract that once divided us ultimately became the foundation for building something authentic. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to participate in their dysfunction. If you're facing similar struggles with family dynamics, remember that you deserve respect, and sometimes you have to be strategic to get it. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Has anyone else had to take dramatic steps to change family patterns? Subscribe to hear more real-life stories about standing your ground and transforming relationships. New videos every Wednesday. And remember, sometimes the most important contract you can honor is the one you make with yourself.